You don't have to say anything. You don't have to walk into a room with a loud voice or dramatic entrance. Just your presence, the way you move, the way you look at someone, the energy you carry, is often enough to make people pause. INFJs don't usually try to intimidate people. In fact, most INFJs don't even realize when they're doing it. But they feel the shift in the room, the awkward silence, the nervous glance, the sudden change in how someone talks or behaves. And it leaves you wondering, what did I do? Here's the answer. It's not what you said. It's what you didn't say. Some personalities need to talk to be seen. Others need to move or dominate to feel in control. But INFJs often make the strongest impact by doing the opposite. You observe. You feel. You notice. And all of that happens before you open your mouth. This kind of presence can make others uncomfortable. Not because you're threatening, but because you're not playing the social games most people expect. You don't fill silence just to avoid tension. You don't fake smiles. You don't offer surface-level approval. You bring realness into the room, and that unsettles people who aren't ready for it. This video is about that unspoken power. The energy you give off in the first 30 seconds. The quiet way you command space. The subtle things that make people feel like they're being seen. And not everyone likes being seen that clearly. Let's start with the first thing people feel when you walk into a room. Way number 1. Deep, steady gaze. INFJs have a way of looking at people that's different from most. It's not just eye contact, it's presence. When you look at someone, it feels like you're not just seeing them, but seeing into them. You don't look to challenge. You look to understand. But the intensity of that gaze can make people feel exposed. For someone who's used to shallow interactions or surface-level attention, being looked at by an INFJ can feel overwhelming. You're not darting your eyes around the room. You're not checking your phone. You're focused, and that focus carries weight. People don't always know what to do with that. They might laugh nervously, look away, or start talking more than usual, trying to break the tension they feel but can't explain. It's not that you're trying to intimidate them. It's just that you're really there. And that level of attention feels rare. The truth is, most people aren't used to being seen without having to perform. But INFJs don't need a performance. You read energy. You sense what's not being said. And when you look at someone, they can feel that. They feel noticed in ways they didn't ask for, and that's not always comfortable. This kind of gaze comes from your natural desire to connect. You want to understand people, even if you don't want to talk to them. But because your intuition and emotional awareness are so sharp, people can't help but feel a little unsteady when you lock eyes with them. They wonder what you're picking up. They worry that you've already figured something out. And sometimes you have. So they shift. They get nervous. They feel like they're being watched too closely. And all you did was look. That's power. The kind that doesn't need volume to be heard. Way number 2. Silence. Refusing small talk. In most social situations, silence makes people uncomfortable. That's why they fill it with small talk, weather, gossip, jokes, anything to avoid the awkward pause. But INFJs don't need that noise. You can sit in silence without feeling pressure to perform. You don't force conversation. You wait for something real. That choice alone can be intimidating. When you don't jump into meaningless chatter, people start to feel exposed. They wonder why you're not talking. They wonder if you're judging them. They start to sense the weight of their own words, because you're not rushing to cover the quiet with fake comfort. You're not avoiding people. You're just not interested in surface-level connection. And that makes others feel challenged. They're used to being able to charm their way into comfort. But you're not giving them that. You're giving them presence, and that's rare. What most people miss is that INFJs are still fully engaged in silence. You're watching, processing, feeling. The room might be loud, but inside you're scanning every shift in tone, posture, and mood. And that depth makes people nervous, especially when they realize they're being understood without having to explain themselves. Your silence isn't passive. It's intentional. You're choosing when to speak and what's worth responding to. You're not here to waste energy on what doesn't matter, and people who live on shallow interactions don't know what to do with that. They might call you quiet. They might label you distant, but deep down they feel it. You're not going to entertain them. You're going to see them. And that's the kind of presence that makes people stop and wonder what you're really thinking. And most of the time, you're thinking far more than they realize. Way number 3, calm composure under pressure. Most people react when things get tense. They raise their voice, fidget, get defensive, or start pushing back. But INFJs often do the opposite. When things get loud, you get still. When the energy rises, yours stays grounded. That calm presence can shake people more than any argument. In moments of stress or confrontation, others expect strong reactions. They expect to be matched either in anger, panic, or volume. But when you don't meet them there, it throws them off. You don't flinch. You don't yell. You don't fight to prove a point. You just sit with it. Quiet. Focused. Unmoved. That kind of control is powerful, and it's unsettling. People often mistake this calm for weakness. But it's the opposite. It takes strength to stay steady when everything else is shaking. It takes patience to listen instead of react. And when people realize they can't pull you into their storm, they get uncomfortable. Sometimes even scared. Your stillness under pressure doesn't mean you don't feel anything. You feel everything. You're just choosing not to let it run the show. That choice shows others you have a kind of self-control they don't fully understand. And what people don't understand, they often fear. In group settings, your calm can shift the whole room. When everyone else is caught in noise or conflict, you stay quiet. You're watching, thinking, choosing your moment. And when you finally speak, it often lands harder than anything said before it. This is how INFJs intimidate without meaning to. You don't need to raise your voice. You just need to stay rooted. That makes people wonder what you know, and why you're not reacting like everyone else. It shows them you're not easy to shake. And people who can't be shaken often hold more power than those who shout to prove they have it. Way number 4, expressive emotional presence without words. NFJs don't need to say much to communicate how they feel. Your posture, your eyes, your body language, all of it speaks. Even when you're trying to stay neutral, people can feel what you're carrying. Your emotional presence fills the space, and others respond to it before they understand it. This isn't something you do on purpose. It's just part of who you are. When you're hurt, others can feel the tension in your body. When you care, it shows in the way you look at someone. When something feels off, your silence gets heavier. You don't have to explain. The room already knows. And that can be intimidating. People are used to controlling what others see. They hide feelings with smiles, jokes, distractions. But when they're around you, they can't hide as easily. Your presence makes their masks feel obvious. It makes their energy shift. Because you're tuned into the undercurrent, not just the surface. This emotional awareness shows up in small ways. A pause in conversation. A look across the room. A sudden shift in how you stand or move. These things might seem subtle, but to the people around you, they're loud. They create tension, curiosity, and sometimes fear. Especially if someone knows they've done something wrong. Even without a word, your presence can carry quiet disappointment or a wall that wasn't there before. You don't need to confront them. They already feel it. That's what makes this so powerful. You're not trying to call anyone out. But your energy does. It reveals what people are trying to hide. And for those who live on pretense or control, that's threatening. You're not loud about your emotions. But they're visible. You carry them like signals, clear, silent, and hard to ignore. Way number 5, observant listening and timing of response. Most people listen to reply. INFJs listen to understand. And that alone can feel intense. You're not jumping in. You're not trying to impress. You're just sitting there, watching, processing, feeling every word, every pause, every contradiction. That kind of attention is rare, and a little scary to people who aren't used to it. When you're silent, people notice. They wonder what you're thinking. They try to read your face, but you're not giving anything away. Then, when you do speak, it's precise, focused, specific, and it often cuts through all the noise. That's the difference. You don't speak just to fill space. You speak to move something, and people feel that shift. It's not about being right. It's about being clear. And because you've taken your time, your words tend to hit harder. Not because they're harsh, but because they're true. You saw something they missed. You pointed out what no one else had the patience to notice. And suddenly, everyone's listening. This makes people nervous, especially those who are used to dominating conversations. They're not sure how to handle someone who listens more than they talk, and still ends up saying the most meaningful thing in the room. Your timing adds to the effect. You don't rush in. You wait. You feel the moment. You speak only when it's worth it. And when you do, it often ends the conversation, not because you shut it down, but because there's nothing more to add. That kind of presence can't be faked, and it can't be ignored. INFJs often intimidate without realizing it, simply by paying attention. People don't like being watched that closely. They don't like being seen past their performance. But that's what you do, and you don't need to say much to make it known. Way number 6. Boundaries shown non-verbally. INFJs don't always explain their boundaries out loud. They show them. A shift in body position. A crossed arm. A quiet lean away. A lack of eye contact. These aren't accidents. They're signals. And the people around you pick up on them, even if they don't know how to name it. When you don't want to engage, you don't have to say it. You step back. You stay quiet. You close off your energy. That alone tells someone, you're not invited in right now. And for people who are used to being welcomed everywhere, that's intimidating. You're not aggressive. You don't push. You just don't open. And that's often more powerful than a confrontation. This shows up in subtle moments. You're in a conversation and someone crosses a line. You don't argue, you just stop responding the same way. Your tone goes flat. Your posture shifts. You pull inward and they feel it. The warmth is gone, and they don't know how to get it back. That's the thing, you don't punish people. You just protect yourself. But that protection is clear. And when someone realizes they've lost your openness, it stings. It leaves them with questions. They wonder what they did wrong. They wonder how to fix it. And sometimes they fear you've already made your decision. Your boundaries aren't walls. They're signals. They tell people what kind of space they're in, without needing an explanation. And that quiet clarity can unsettle those who are used to pushing past limits without being called out. But with you, there's no need for words. The message is already clear. You're not here for games. You're not here to perform. You're here to protect your energy. And anyone who tries to test that will feel it before you ever say a word. People don't always know what to make of you. You're quiet, but not passive. Kind, but not naive. Observant, but never nosy. You walk into a room and don't demand attention, but you get it anyway. That's the INFJ effect. You don't need words to make an impression. You don't need a spotlight to be seen. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. Your energy does the work, and people feel it in seconds. Sometimes they're drawn to it. Sometimes they're confused by it. And sometimes, yes, they're intimidated. But that doesn't mean you need to change. You don't have to shrink to make people feel comfortable. You don't have to explain your silence, soften your gaze, or fake small talk just to be accepted. Your presence is clear, focused, grounded, and that's what sets you apart. So ask yourself, which of these ways have you seen in yourself? Which ones have made people act differently around you, even when you said nothing? You don't have to hide your presence. You just have to own it. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Stillness doesn't mean weak. In a world full of noise, sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one that hasn't said a thing.